Right, welcome back. You're watching Standing on Guard here on AM Live. We continue with the conversation with the panelists here, but also acting as a segue to a conversation on polygraph and fighting corruption. There is a very interesting editorial cartoon that has been drawn today by Munene in the Daily Nation. And of course, we can see there, these are the procurement officers. Maybe they will be consulting now the witch doctor. And here is their conversation. They're saying he's here to help confuse this lie detector, I should say, machine, but at a fee. And I want just to cross over now to Major Retired Lucy Mukure to tell us more about this. Your background also, I think you have a training on what polygraph is all about. Many Kenyans are wondering, how does it work? Yeah, how does it detect, I should say, a lie? Maybe you can give us a brief history of polygraph.
Well,
has it worked in this nation? Is this the first time? Because I'm going to understand also with the retired President Arap Moi, also there was an issue with the polygraph that was brought before. I cannot remember the history. Maybe you can tell us.
Okay. I think, first of all, it's called a polygraph instrument, not a machine. I think instrument because at the end of the day, the person who is operating it, there's a lot of emphasis on the person who is operating it, their level of sophistication and understanding of it. But let me begin by saying that the polygraph machine is not a be-all and end-all. It is part of a process that is supposed to bring clarity to a situation. So what the polygraph machine does is that it checks whether somebody is directly involved in an activity, whether it is criminal, especially criminal in nature. And I want to say criminal in nature because a lot of people get it wrong. They try to use the polygraph instrument for issues of fidelity, for example. No, it's actually for issues of criminal activity and pre-employment and sexual assault. That's what they're commonly used for. So you use it to see whether somebody is directly involved in whatever the issue is. You use it to check whether somebody has knowledge of that situation, that activity, and you check to see whether the person was complicit in any way in that corrupt activity. So those are the three things that the polygraph instrument does. Once it's carried out, then it's not an ambush thing. It's a question and answer situation where what is used to tell the levels of honesty of a person are based on their breathing, based on their changes in their blood pressure, based on their level of perspiration, based on the level of their twitching. So you find that you will get something for the fingers that will check on perspiration. You'll get some a BP machine to check on blood pressure. You get what we call pneumo cables to check on the breathing, and you have somewhere you can put your feet and something you can sit on, because we are not tailored to lie. So every time we lie, there's a way our body reacts to that kind of dishonesty. That is what that machine picks up. So it picks up that you're not being honest about a particular issue. Somebody might also be anxious. And that's why I'm saying it's not an end-all and be-all. So at the end of the day, when there's that inconsistency in specific questions, which, by the way, are not ambush questions, they are questions that me and you have sat and agreed upon. Because when you're coming for a polygraph interview, you know why you're getting it done. So me and you actually prepare the questions. It's not a leakage. It's just, you know, there's no surprise. And by the time I am administering the interview on you, I already know how you lie because, you know, of the interaction that we've had before. So it's a process, it's a relationship. It's not something that is fast. It's not something that is, you know, hostile. In fact, it's a relationship of trust. And I feel very good about the polygraph instrument because even on the level of corrupting it, it's pretty low. Because even as I finish my interview, I am not the one who is going to declare that this person is not being, there's a concern about this question or this question, you know. It's passed on to somebody else who reviews the statistics of your bodily response. There's no name, there's no face, just the chart. So the person looks at the charts and, makes their comments, and it goes to another person. So there's a chain of verifications, let me call it. So at the end of the day, when it comes back and it comes with a report, it is able to guide the process of where to focus on next, and very specifically what should be focused on.
Mm-hmm. So the questions that you have prior and maybe during, I don't know if you're saying there's sort of a preliminary exercise that you have before.
Yes.
You have questions that you agree, you and,
yes.
should I call you the interviewer?
Yes.
Right? So what is the essence of that particular session, and maybe also the material now exercise that you'll have that you're seeking out to get the answers,
okay.
or to find out the culprit?
So like I've told you, it's for establishing those three things: direct involvement, knowledge, and complicity. So
is it an essence that you're comparing prior and now,
not at all.
And then you can see the discrepancy?
Not at all, not at all. And even, like I said, the setting up of the questions it's agreed upon, because I will ask you, Dr. Mustafa, do you intend to tell me the truth about how you accounted for money at NYS? He'll tell me yes or no. But then the responses are always yes or no. There's no storytelling. Okay? But before that, of course, there's a test that I've administered, totally unrelated to NYS, that has told me how you lie. Then I'll ask you, is today Wednesday?
Am I perspiring?
Yeah. That sort of thing. So, and so, I mean, obvious things. I'll ask you, are you married? You say yes, because, how, do you have two children? I was avoiding that. Like that. Then, I say to you, do you know how the money was lost?
The studio is very hot.
Anyway, that's basically how it works. I think a lot of the idea of what the polygraph instrument does is borrowed from movies. Let's be frank. It's borrowed from movies, but it's a very systematic process. People say, oh, I'm going to beat it. You will not.
All right.
People have tried. They have lost.
Okay. Maybe we can also try and explore the legal avenues that or entanglement that will come with this, because people are saying, of course, where is the line between now my privacy? Because the exercise seems to be very invasive. Yeah, but that you're actually infringing on my privacy. But there is a collaboration, because do you sign somewhere that
you have to sign a consent.
You have to sign a consent.
Right.
Okay. So, in terms of the Bill of Rights, in terms of the legal avenues that this is, that the president has said that yes, some of the procurement officers should go through this particular exercise, but through what legal framework are we having this particular directive from the president? Because this is where we're getting the challenge, right? Maybe we can hear from any of you who can actually pick up on this. I can see you stringing at the leash. Maybe Dr. Bera Jack, you can tell us more about that.
No, I'm not. I don't know Kenyan law and how the public administration law is, but this is very relevant, because even in many contexts, like even in criminal context, in places like even like in the US, there are cases where people are within their legal right to refuse polygraph tests, right? So it's not something that you force people to do.
Right.
And here is not something that is part of the public service law, because the people that you are intending to interview are public servants that were hired per Public Service Act. And that doesn't talk anywhere about taking polygraph tests. It talks about maybe doing interviews. So that we will see how that will happen. But for me, the intervention that I want to make is, from what I understand about polygraph tests and what she was explaining, this is a very complicated process, and there is no understanding of how long interviews take, right? Because they keep asking you questions, yes or no question, until they finish, right? So it seems like it could be quite expensive. If you're talking about interviewing hundreds of procurement and accountants in the country, and then the kind of technical expertise that is needed. And then how often will you be doing this? Will it be after every tendering? Will it be after every financial year that you will be asking the accountants and public procurement officers to go through polygraph tests? I think there are other options that are available for addressing this issue of vice, this vice of corruption. before you go to polygraph test. I think there is a huge jump here, and I'm not really convinced that to address the problem of corruptions and mismanagement of resources, that what is needed is polygraph tests. I think there are much basic accounting, procurement issues that are not being addressed, issues of accountability, rule of law, budget management that are not being addressed. And people here are looking for an easy way out. And they just say, oh, let's do a polygraph test. I'm not convinced that this actually is the right thing.
All right, Balozi, let's see, we'll come to you, Prof.
Well, let me first of all address the issue of polygraph and say that this is really part of the science that is now developing, the artificial intelligence. And we know that artificial intelligence has quite some capability in determining the way we think and the way we act. That's why you see now, and you raised a good point, Debal, about the privacy, because if you look at what has happened, whether it is on elections, with Facebook being accused of having released data, one can even see from your credit card, your consumption, and be able to read and know what kind of person you are, because what you purchase, where you go, and what you eat can be seen from that intelligence. So that's one side of it, that yes, it can approximate. Science is not, of course science tries to be precise, but from what you analyze, there is some element of human input that could go wrong, and that's why you can see that element of people now trying to see how can they cheat, and so people would be going to consult witch doctors on how to be able to navigate. By the way, when you have to fight corruption, I saw what happened in Nigeria when President Buhari took this to heart, like what we are doing now. And what happened then, of course, those in authority to be able to investigate and deal with corruption, they themselves got corrupted. They would now go with a file to individuals that are concerned and say, hey, here we have your file, and demand some bribe, and the whole thing also started to lose momentum. So we must be careful. That is the human element. But let me come now to the legal point that you raised. I've seen the professional body of procurement supporting this step. I am not a lawyer, so I leave to the lawyers to determine. Of course, as Peter said, one cannot be forced. You've seen in America now the big debate about the president saying, I cannot come, I cannot be able to testify. There are procedures that one must use. What I thought, in my view, there is already too many reports around that we can act from. For instance, if you look at the Auditor General's report, it already has names there you can start with. This huge blanket is good, but you are now, the collateral damage would be quite big. I mean, some kids must be really feeling tormented. Their dad, their mother is at home, and it's because they have been suspected, they were stealing. Some of them would have been honest. Why don't we start with those reports where some people have been involved, so that we are systematic? We have a number of, I read an op-ed which tried to indicate that if you go back to Golden Bag or, all these other cases that have happened, we have this team that dies. I am sure the president is determined to move forward, but I would suggest that let's be systematic so that we don't just go everywhere.
All right, let's hear from Noami Dama. We'll come to you, Dr. Mustafa.
Dubal, my university, KCA, trained 40% of all accountants in the country. And we subject the students to really rigorous tests. One of it is no cheating, zero tolerance. I was just telling my colleagues here that recently I kicked out 70 students out of the university, including cheating in classroom. And some of those are potential future accountants.
Yes.
So what it demonstrates today, and let me talk briefly about societal and then talk about individual. Societal is we have a problem as a country. We are one of the most corrupt country in the world and in Africa. We cannot accept and live with the idea that we live in a man-eat-man society. And therefore, the president has right to set a tone for the society, whether polygraph test and or any other things. But we need, like Ambassador Mwenje said, now go back and use every instrument at our disposal, including real evidence, including polygraph test, including all other things. The president, I don't think, meant to say polygraph test is it. Right. That's not what he meant to say. But we need to use that as part of the whole thing to catch an individual who's been involved with this act, who's destroying the name of this country and scandalize the whole society and putting us in a really serious situation. So that's I felt what the president meant.
Right. Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Dibali, yes, it's part of the use of polygraph. It's just a part of the process, and perhaps to be used towards the end, almost towards the end, to really ascertain and confirm. But the issue here is basic. In fact, it's not that hard. Follow the money. From the reports, the auditor's report, get what has been stolen, and then try and follow that. If somebody has stolen 200, 300 million within the country, I think that person can be tracked. If the banks are working, the central bank, the investigators, and who are really qualified on the forensics of it, they can get the money. And I think the corrupt people are known. If you just do a very simple lifestyle audit, somebody who's earning 50,000 or 70,000, and this person has 10 matatus, well, you may want to go out to the bank. Did this person get a loan to do that, or lives in a mansion that is 50 million? You can get that. There are Kenyans who I think can beat the most sophisticated polygraph. Seriously, they can. The ones whose way of life is corruption, I think they can beat the polygraph one way or the other. And yeah, these people, Dibal, there was a story last week I saw that there was a clinical officer who demanded a bribe of 3,000 to have a child who needed blood transfusion. That child was going to die, needed a blood transfusion immediately. This clinical officer demanded 3,000 bribe from the mother, from the parents, and say, I'm not having this transfusion until you pay me 3,000. Now, if I was the parent, the feeling I would have is to strangle that clinical officer. Of course, I wouldn't do it. But when you have such a person, no need even to go through the polygraph test. These are people, I mean, the scum of the world. Yeah. And there are many. When you look at the newspaper, look at the Star, look at, just open. There are people who stole vaccines here. And by the way, there are children who died because these people stole vaccines.
Pathologists who've stolen hearts. Yeah. Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So why are we even having them still working in positions of responsibility?
Right.
I don't understand.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Right, let's just wind up on it. And we have Tash Tush also on social media saying that polygraph ain't 100%. One can beat this poly test by regulating your heartbeat and being calm when answering the question. And it has been done before. Ask Major Retired of course, Lucy Mukuria, she'll conquer with him. So we can beat it, can we? Right? And also we have Jacob Abere Jalala saying Kenyans have that old mentality that one overstays in schools, putting school quarters in, putting schools quarters in school compounds, petty issues swept under carpet when they come up, and also others lack external counseling and interactions lessons for student exposure. We have Ian Gitata saying, if there was a blockchain database system to record things countrywide, nobody will run away from getting caught. He still says that then get a digital database for record keeping. It's time to scale up security services. Honestly, our police stations are in such disgusting shape. Our systems are poor, responding time poor, and we call ourselves a middle-income country. On Being Charlie is saying that beyond the perimeter wall, the surrounding communities to schools nationwide should be engaged in the PTA and BOM to increase ownership and enhance security. Your neighbor can be your greatest threat or source of security. Also, we have Situma saying, not true. It records psychological responses which can be modified by autonomic drugs. If I take propranolol, it doesn't matter how much lie, my heart's beat will never race. All right, so we're getting
Do you want me
into-
to respond to that?
Please, briefly.
Do you want me to respond to
I
that?
have no sorting idea what that particular medicine is, but you can, you can tell us.
Let me just respond to that. So one of the conditions to actually undergo the polygraph interview is that you are not under influence of any drug. The way the whole interview is set up, based on what your physiological response will be, I will know that you have taken something. And therefore it becomes null and void, and
But
I'll
then-
send you home.
They normally tell us, you know... when
So
you're
you can't
going-
beat it.
When you're going for an interview, relax, breathe in, hold your breath.
Do
then
yoga,
breathe
man.
out, or do yoga. So all those dynamics, they don't really have, you know...
No,
any
because there's a way
relations.
the body lies.
But Lucy,
Okay.
there are cases of known cases where people have beat the polygraph machine.
I don't
right?
dispute that. I'm just saying that I think we are over-sophisticating the problem in order to write it off
Right.
as a way of actually addressing the
problem.
level of dishonesty in our community.
All right, okay.
Yes.